Okay, students, here is how to make a Magic 8-ball simulator. This is the medium version because we're going to use a brand new concept in JavaScript called a list. So that's how we're going to store the responses for our Magic 8-ball. So right now I'm on the JavaScript compiler, which is like a little test kitchen for JavaScript. So I can search program is JavaScript compiler, as you see up there, and it should be the first link here. And for this activity, we want to create a Magic 8-ball that responds to yes or no questions. And so our first step is going to be to, 1, collect a question. Let's make sure it's a yes or no question from the user. And then the second step is to select and display a random response. So it sounds pretty simple, and I think it will be. Just a reminder that when I use 2 slashes, that turns my line of code into a comment, which means that it does not really affect the program. You'll notice my program doesn't really do anything. All it does is add text for me to read. So let's start with step 1, collect a yes or no question from the user. And maybe I have taught you before that the command to ask for a input from the user is prompt, P-R-O-M-P-T. Make sure you put that P in there. A lot of people forget that, and it doesn't work. And then we want to type the message. What do we want it to display when it asks for the user? We should ask for the question. We should just say, enter a yes or no question. And there we go. Let's run our code, see if the first part is working. Enter a yes or no question. Is Avatar the last airbender the greatest ever? Now, of course, it's not going to do anything because we haven't told it to, but it does run properly. There's no errors. So I think we can move on to step number 2. Select and display a random response. So in this project, we are actually going to store a bunch of different responses in what's called a list. So a list, or sometimes called an array, is just a collection of items. Imagine like you can store 10 variables at once. So let's call our list responses. And we can declare a list just like a variable. We can use var and then just type the name of responses equals. And to create a list in JavaScript, all we need to do is add these square brackets here, which are right next to the letter P. Okay, not the curly brackets. We don't want those one. We just want the regular brackets. So don't hold the shift key. And now what we can do is enter our different responses, and all we need to do is separate them by commas. Okay, and so I could just say yes, and then after the quotes, I'll add a comma, no, and then I can add maybe. Now we can always add responses later, just by adding more items to our list. Okay, so we have created our list of responses. Now it's still not going to select one, so if I enter my question, it still doesn't do anything. So we need to first pick one of these responses. And let's create a new variable called var random. And we are going to get one of these items from the list. Now, there's a few different ways we can do this. Let me show you. Console.log. Why don't we display one of the items from a list? Now, the question is, Mr. Torres, how do we get an item from the list? Well, we can type in the name of the list, and then in these square brackets next to it, I'm going to place what's called an index. Now, an index is like the location of the item. Now, the tricky thing about indexes or indices is that the first one, you'd think it's 1, it actually starts at 0. So if I were to print the first item, so console.log responses, if I were to type in 0, that would print the first item. So no matter what I type here, it's going to print the first item. Every time I run this, it's going to say yes. Okay, what would I type in here if I wanted to get the second item? I would type actually I would type the number 1, because the first one is 0, this one is 1, and this one is 2. So now you'll see it should say no. And I can enter, boom, and that would give me maybe. Okay, so basically I want to get an item from this list, but I want a random item, right? So I don't want this number to be 2 every time. I want this number to be a random number. So why don't I create a variable called random that is going to be a random number, and the random number should be between 0 and 2. All right, so I could say Math.random times, now I could say times 3. That would give me either 0, 1, or 2, because it's 3 options. But instead of doing that, why don't I use the length of the list in order to pick the number? That way, I will, if I add items to the list, it'll automatically update. So Math.random, instead, let me use the name of the list. I can use responses, I think it's .length. It's been a while since I've done JavaScript, so let's see if that's correct. Maybe it'll give me a syntax error. Undefined. I think I need to do Math.floor. Okay. And error. I think it needs, oops, I have an extra semicolon. Maybe that's it. There we go. So what this is going to do is generate a random number. Now it's going to generate a random number from 0 to 2, right? Because I'm multiplying by the length of the list, which is 3. And so that's going to round down to either 0, 1, or 2. Now the advantage of using the length here is now if I add an extra item to this list, like perhaps, it's got to be in quotes, then it's going to automatically update so that it can be any number within that list. Let's run until I get it perhaps. Might take a while because it's random. I just want to make sure it's working. There it is, perhaps. So it could be 0, 1, 2, 3. So 0, 1, 2, or 3. Those are going to be the different possible numbers, and then I'm going to display that message. So that is how you use a list to create a Magic 8-Ball simulator. And of course, you can add as many responses as you would like, and it will automatically work. So I could say not in a million years. And feel free to add more items to update your Magic 8-Ball simulator. Good luck, everybody.